Hi, I'm Fionnuala Malone of the Milk Supply team. Welcome to our video where I'm chatting this morning to Don Crowley from Teagasc about cell count this spring and how to stay on top of things. The whole idea of setting yourself up well for spring and controlling cell count there means that it won't become a problem through the year. Don has some simple ideas on how to prioritise things and at which areas to focus on.
I suppose the risks we're seeing at farm level, three main ones that we're seeing is, I suppose, where people start with a bad start, and traditionally, and a lot of herds they'll come down, but in a lot of herds they're persisting through the year. And I suppose how to deal with that. Second thing is an issue with heifers. We're expecting them to be the best in the herd and to help sort the problem, but they can be ones that are causing most of an issue. And then we have a problem with late calving cows that last 20%. I suppose the real thing from the point of view of dealing with this, how do we deal with this? It's so busy now in the springtime year, how do we deal with it? Prioritise. You're going to have half the cows calved in 3 weeks. You're going to have approximately 70-80% calved in 6 weeks. And you've 20% then will be calved in the last 6 weeks. So if we just say, right, for the first 3 weeks, we're going to go after the first 50% and prioritise that. Milk recording is our number one tool. It is the real armour that we have in our war chest. And I suppose number one, are we doing it? Number two, are we doing it early enough? And number three, are we using the data? The other way is if I'm not milk recording or if I'm not milk recording early enough, I can sample individual cows and send them into your local co-op. But the milk recording is a key piece of data. First thing, are we doing it early enough? At the very latest, within 60 days of the first cow calving. Ideally within 30 days of the first cow calving. Because remember what I said, we're going to have half the cows calved in 3 weeks. So if I milk record in 30 days, more than half my cows, so I'm going to be on the front foot then straight away. It's a great simple tool to use. I think the biggest thing what farmers find frustrating is their ability to interpret the results. But persevere with it, it's very simple. Identify the cows that were in trouble last year, paddle them when, say, 4 days after calving, so that you're over your withdrawal. They're about to come into the tank, they're gone from bee stings to transition milk to milk, now coming into milk, so I'll get a true reading on this. And what you're trying to identify is that problem quarter in that cow. If the cow is high in 3 or 4 quarters, and traditionally you'll see this in heifers, that's stress-induced, she'll sort herself out. If that cow is high in 1 quarter, it's either shut the quarter down, or if it's a very young cow, treat it. But the CMT test, a fantastic tool for that immediate response and immediate information. The calved group is changing so quick and so often that when I go into herds and you count the amount of cubicles that are allocated to freshly calved cows, they're often deficient. And a freshly calved cow needs to be able to lie down. Their intakes are quite poor, they're just getting going, they're tired after calving, they might have a subclinical milk fever, they need to be able to lie down. And often I go in, farmers just don't have the time to allocate the appropriate amount of cubicles. That has to be prioritised. We have shown in the Moore Park research, twice a day liming is significantly improving your chances. Disinfectant lime once a week, especially for the fresh calf groups, is a very worthwhile investment. And the fourth thing to be careful of, depending on your house design, if you have automatic scrapers, are they being turned on and off for fear cows calf inside the cubicles? And that may impact on the cleanliness of the cubicles. So you've got to be very, very careful that the scrapers are running off enough to maintain a clean cubicle bed. If you're milking through, just make sure that your liners are 2,000 milkings, okay? If you shut down completely, it's a great opportunity to start with a new set of liners, because if Staph aureus is in my herd, I won't bring it from last year to this year. I've opened liners and spliced them and swabbed them, and I've grown Staph aureus in the subsequent spring. So it's an opportunity, if you could, start with a new set of liners. Check the vacuum, 46, 48 kPa. Number one, is there a clock there? Number two, is it working? And number three, is it showing 46, 48 kPa? Number three, look at your cluster movers. Look at the timing set, the delay time between when the cluster turns off to when the string engages to pull off. The delay time should be 3 seconds. But we've found in a number of cases that the cluster flush aren't dispensing the volumes that they have. So how do you check a cluster flush? You basically go down along your units, you hit start, you hit stop, and when they have a bucket ready, flush it into the bucket and into a jug and measure. There should be 800 mils to a litre in every flush. in the combined flush should be coming through, and check all your units. You'll be surprised at the number of units that are giving out a solution but not giving the appropriate amount. And the other thing is that is there paracetic acid going through at the right concentration, and make sure the drum isn't out of date. You know, that drum could have been there all year. Just be conscious of that. We're underestimating the impact that over milking is having on cows. And in the spring time of the year, where the ACRs really come into their own, is when you're having to stay with heifers to keep the cluster on them because they may be a bit agitated. That means there's another bunch of cows being over milked. So it's just giving that consistency of milking that, you know, that without them you can't deliver. And so where they really come to their own is at the start of lactation and at the tail end of lactation, when cows have really tapered off. And when people put in ACRs that never had them before, the first thing they'll say to you is, I never realised how much over milking was going on until they actually came in. The most of teat spray is put on enough of it. You know, there's a lot of farmers ask me which is the best dip on the market. To be fair, once there's lactic acid and chlorhexidine at the appropriate concentrations, the biggest impediment at farm level is we're not putting on enough of it. What is it? 15 mils per cow per milking. With an ambic teat sprayer, that's going to take approximately 4 seconds to apply 15 mils. 4 seconds on a 20 unit parlour is 80 seconds. Are you spending 80 seconds teat spraying a cow in one row? A lot of us aren't. I think that the one thing that's a handy little tip, we're finding very good results, is the barrier dips being used on the freshly calved cows after the calf. So I'm physically putting a barrier dip to inhibit any environmental mastitis getting on that cow. Freshly calved, oedema in the udder, maybe a bit of subclinical milk fever, the teats are open, they're very prone for picking up infection. The barrier dips for that row, not a big labour in present, no cost, but a big kickback on return on investment from mitigating against that environmental mastitis. When you're so busy at this time of the year, compartmentalise what you have to do. I've half the cows going to calf in 3 weeks. I'm going to concentrate on that half the cows get on the front foot. I'll have 80% of them calved in 6 weeks. And then the last 20% is going to take me 6 weeks to calve them. So I would break it down into sections and deal with that. The first 50%, am I allocating the cubicles quickly and frequent enough? Am I keeping them clean? Am I keeping them dry? The late calving cows, the 20%, I'm watching condition score on them. I'm watching for milk fever. That's your gateway disease that's opening the door for the rest of them. And mind the heifers. So for selectively dried off cows, the application is still the same as if there was antibiotics or not. So we have bee stings, colostrum, then we've transition milk, which is going to take 4 days to get out of the system, and then we're into milk. So a minimum of 4 milking, which is 8 milkings or 4 days minimum before it can go into the tank. It's crucial to expel the sealer when a freshly calved cow. 2 reasons. Number 1, you've established whether the calf has sucked the cow or not. That's the first thing. So if there's a sealer in 4 teats, you know that the calf needs bee stings. Second thing is you need to take out that sealer because it's going to have a big impact on how your automatic cluster movers are going to work. And number 3, it's a huge impediment for tier lawn or any of the processors from the point of view getting into the milk. So the 4 days is crucial to getting that sealer out of the system before you put it into the tank. The sock will not stop that going into the tank. You will get a certain amount of it caught in the sock. The sock won't catch all of it. As farmers, we've got to get into the habit of taking a sample of clinical cases of mastitis. In my opinion, we should be taking a sample of every clinical case of mastitis that we get. Whether you use them or not, I'm not worried about it, but at least have them. What you need to do is take every clinical case I'm going to get a sample of. The only way I'm going to remember that is if these bottles are inside in the box of tubes. So when I go for a tube, the bottle's in the way. I put on a new pair of gloves. I'm trying to find the bacteria that's in the udder of the cow, not in the environment. So a new pair of gloves, mitts, cotton wool, or the wipes that are there. Come down, take your sample from your aseptically, from your cow, from your quarter, cow number, date, quarter, and freeze it. Pop it into the freezer. And then that gives you time to find out what am I dealing with. It gives you 2 options. Number 1, what's culturing, and number 2, I can go back and I can record them in ICBF to show me what kind of patterns are happening. So when you talk to your advisor or vet, they can interpret that data for you. Crucial part of your business. You've got to start sampling everyone. Costing nothing, but at least if you have a sample, you can do something about it. I think on the Milky routine, in particular as a spring, as we're talking about the first 100 days, risk period, freshly calved cows, and I'm trying to stop them getting infection and stop infections from spreading to come from cow to cow. So to stop me from spreading it, I would pre-spray any cow I'm going to handle. So pre-spray, strip them, wipe them. So that's stopping me from spreading them. New pair of gloves every milking, and a new pair of gloves when you go from the fresh group to the main group. So you're stopping any transfer from one group to the next. Post-spray, clusters on, clusters off, and spray. 4 seconds to apply your 15 mils. Prep in batches of 4 or 6. Cup on, cup and 4 to 6, and move down 4, 6, 4 to 6. Your oxytocin reflex is maximally induced with that kind of setting.
For further information on cell count and how to manage it this spring, please contact your milk supply manager or have a look on tierlawnfarmlife.com for any of our resources which will give you some insights on what to do.